Oh boy, this has been a really hot week this week. And you know, it's like, of course, with Gay Pride Month, we're going to have all kinds of things going on. We had this drag queen situation happening just down the street here in Dallas at a bar where these kids were getting groomed and there was a massive protest. We've got the Tampa Bay Ray players are not going to wear the LGBT logo, and they're being outed because they're Christians. They're taking a stand in public. Could it be that we're reaching the point now where Christians are not going to be able to avoid controversy, but they're going to have to own their beliefs and answer for what they believe? I think that we're in an hour of great awakening, and you have to be able to give an answer, a reason for the hope that is in you that includes a reason for why you believe what you believe in a culture that's being aggressively trained to think differently. But the good news is the silver is mine and the gold is mine, the Bible says. And God has given us answers in the Bible, which are called apples of gold and settings of silver. That means that the Lord is going to give you the wisdom to be able to answer your enemies. And we're going to train you, like in today's program. We're going to talk about the issues with Pride Month and what you need to know, because they're coming for your children. I'm sorry to say it. We're going to have stories about that with our own staff here participating. And speaking of apples of gold and settings of silver, the prophet Haggai said, when shaking comes to heaven and earth, remember this, I'm building my house in the midst of global shaking, and the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Ever since I read that, and I talked to some business people, they said, you know, there's something about understanding real estate, understanding commodities, understanding gold and silver. Joseph understood the commodities market when he was running Egypt in the midst of a famine, in preparation for a famine. You need to smarten up on God is the God of business as well as the God of church. And that's why we always now recommend you go to lancewallnau.com/Birch. Get their 21-page analysis of why it is that precious metals such as gold and silver retain their store of value in a fluctuating economy, and why it is that smart people make the investment as a hedge against what's happening with an economy like ours. Go to lancewallnau.com/Birch. Make the investment in knowledge, and you might end up making some smart investments to handle what's coming on the earth. We'll see you on the other side. This is going to be one wild show today. You don't want to miss it. I want to talk to you about a couple of the subjects you're not going to hear in other news and podcasts. One of which is that the Amazon employees have staged a die-in. Did you hear this? Mm-hmm. This is what's happening with all the corporations. They're hiring, the HR departments are hiring woke people. The strategy of the left is like a takeover. It's like an evangelism campaign to disciple a nation. I think the church ought to wake up and understand how you're being outplayed by people that are more serious about their religion than yours. They put their own people in as much as possible into the HR department, and then they hire the woke cadre of employees that are going to be part of their takeover of corporate America. Disgruntled Amazon employees at the company's Seattle headquarters, no surprise there, Seattle, staged a so-called die-in protest during a Pride event. We got a whole month of Pride. By the way, I think this Pride thing is getting a little bit too much. We got 4% of the population identifies as LGBTQ, whatever the other numbers are, letters are. And you know what? We got more heterosexuals. I think we ought to have a Happy Hetero Month. Happy Het Month is going to be when I'm running for office, it's going to be Happy Hetero Month for all of the happy heterosexuals in the world, which comprise about, 68% or 70% of the people? So 30 of these employees draped themselves in blue, pink, and white transgender pride flags and laid on the ground during the pride flag-raising ceremony. I'm in Amazon Seattle's headquarters, where about 30 Amazon employees are staging a die-in during Amazon's pride flag-raising ceremony in protest of the company's continued sale of what they say are transphobic books. Nothing more than Matt Walsh challenging the popular narrative about men are women and women are men. The motivations behind the Thursday demonstration are books by Daily Wire's Matt Walsh, Johnny the Walrus, and his most latest one, which is really burning things up right now, is What is a Woman? What is a Woman? Have you guys seen the trailer for that one yet?
Yep.
How's it look?
Looks really interesting. I haven't watched it. It's definitely on my list of watching in the next week or two. I really like his approach to it from what I've seen of just being slightly confrontational and a little bit trollish, but also like giving them the space to just let them air out their own opinions.
And really hang themselves out to dry, at least from the segments I saw.
Walsh used the publicity from the attack to get his book to #1 on Amazon. I think that's how you got to do it. You got to take it's a judo technique. You take the momentum of the attack and you use it to advertise.
I like the most is like I've seen little snippets of it where he's like, "Well, what is a woman?" And everybody, it's circular reasoning because then they go, "Well, it's anybody who calls himself a woman." He goes, "Yeah, but what is a woman?" And they're like, "Well," and then he's like, so people are like, "Well, I think we should just shut this interview down right now. It's clear you want me to give like a biological definition of what a woman is, but how they use it's just circular reasoning. A woman is anybody who identifies as a woman." You're like, "But what's a woman? Biologically, what is a woman?" So it's just fascinating. I mean, he's got pediatricians on there who are. Oh, and then the other thing too is what the drug that they use for puberty blockers is the same drug that we give to like sex offenders. It causes chemical castration.
Yep.
And so he starts speaking about that and he goes, "Well, what about this? Isn't this what you're prescribing to these kids?" And you see the pediatrician like, "Well, I just don't think we should continue with this interview." And he's like, "But this is what this is all it is just data." And I love him because he's got a bit of a demeanor like Carl, but I think even a little more muted, where it's just, I mean, he uses the same tone. He doesn't get irate or anything like that. It's just really monotone, but these are the facts.
These are the facts, and it's the facts that are kind of in your favor. The Ricky Gervais is coming out with some really pungent stand-up comedy now on the subject, and I think that. I think we're going to begin to see this ground loosen up. The several Tampa Bay Rays players in this article on that I'm reading here explain why they can't wear the team's LGBT logo. Simply stated, like, we believe in Jesus. When you're forced to have to pitch on the Black Lives Matter mound, and when you have to wear the LGBT logo, there's been a curious takeover of culture by these activist-funded political agendas that has been politely tolerated for so long that I think you're beginning to see the courage of a pushback taking place. A number of Tampa Bay players decided not to wear the rainbow-colored logos on their uniform as part of the team's annual LGBTQ Pride Night on Saturday. The Rays officials wanted full participation from the team, but gave all the players the choice to opt in and wear the rainbow-colored logo, added to the TB on the ball caps and sunburst on the right sleeve of the game. But the players refused. I think it takes a lot of courage for pitcher Jason Adams, Jalen Beeks, Brooks Rowley, Jeffrey Springs, and Ryan Thompson to do this. I mean, think about this. It's just putting pressure on people to have to defend their religious views because of the aggressiveness of these corporations. If I was a lawyer, I'd be looking at whether they have a class action opportunity to say, "Hey, you're killing my marketing potential. You're killing my career. You're going to open me up to all kinds of censorship because of my religion, and this is a form of harassment. And keep the religion out of my profession because it's a religious, moralistic worldview that LGBTQ is adopted." People are missing this. BLM and LGBTQ are the new religion. They are trying to displace the traditional underpinnings of Western civilization, which is a belief in God and a sense of the sanctity of marriage and the sanctity of life.
Yeah.
And so it's coming to a head. And of course, they're going to say, "Well, what right do you have to have a..." Well, you don't have a right to out me like this. So I'm going to now make you pay, Tampa Bay. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting aspects of a conversation we can have about this. I'd love to do a Bible study, Lance, on maybe you pointing out where in Scripture homosexuality is condemned, because believe it or not, I've been posting just a lot of different memes, especially in preparation for June 1st, and it's like, June 1st is here, and it's like one that's going viral right now. It's like Do you remember when Kramer has the red chicken sign that is put outside of his window, and it's like bright red in his apartment, and Jerry walks by and he's like, what's going on in there? And in the show, it's like, oh, it's the chicken company. But somebody made a meme, and it's like, it's June 1st, it's woke corporations. And they changed it to all like, rainbow stuff coming in. So I've been posting stuff like that, and I get a lot of comments in there, Lance, about, well, Jesus would have just loved all of those people. And, homosexuality isn't condemned in the Bible. I don't know where you're getting that from. And so I get comments like that in there. So it might be worth you talking about, one, where that is in the Bible. But it also brings up this other thought in my head. I just want to get in here because I had to have the awkward conversation with my now 11-year-old about a lot of these topics. And it's inundated, even at a young age, and like we see in school curriculum and television, LGBT and supporting it. And it's Gay Pride Month. We got to support it, right? And so we talk about, well, what does Jesus say about all of this? And so I think it would be really helpful, like if you went through and did, a Bible study along those lines, and even just pointing out just the concept of pride itself. I mean, the idea that pride is the word that they put on everything. Pride itself is sin, so it's like a buy one, get one in the month of June. Not only are you getting homosexuality, you're also getting the concept of pride. And so anyways, I'd love to do a deeper dive. I don't know if it's this program, but maybe it could be like a Saturday program or something like that. But it's remarkable.
Well, that's what we have the chat thread for. Or if you're interested in that kind of a show, we can certainly do it. I think it's worthwhile. We probably should take the 5 top areas of attack that are destroying America right now. Racism and the exploitation of children. What's going on now that's bothersome is how they're targeting kids. I mean, your 11-year-old is bringing it up because it's in her school.
Yeah. I remembered what I was going to say because I got off for a second. So I had to explain it to her this way. And I was like, when it comes to sin and the month of June, I mean, sin is sin. I don't look at homosexuality as any different than lying, cheating, stealing, adultery. Sin is sin. But what's happened with the left is it's moved beyond I can love you and not accept the sin like a normal, like that's what it was back in the 80s. Like I can love you, but the sin itself needs to be condemned. But this idea that it needs to be celebrated, that it's not good enough for me just to love you as a person and say, this part of your lifestyle I really question. I need to celebrate it. And so when I was illustrating it to her, I was like, listen, it would be like, because this is the most offensive thing for a lot of people in relationships. It would be like if your spouse cheats on you and it's like adultery. It would be like every person who ever committed adultery getting together and saying, we're going to have a parade to celebrate adultery. We're going to have swag to celebrate adultery. And we're going to put big shirts and we're going to have a flag. I mean, that's the level of celebration of sin we're talking about, because for so much from like my 11-year-old, she doesn't see it as sin. It's like love is love. And we have to talk through it and say, well, here's where it is in the Bible. So it's just an illustration. Or like everybody who is a liar. It's like, if you've ever been lied to, it's offensive. Sin itself is offensive. And so there's something that's been lost when it comes to this type of a sin. And I think the American psyche, that sin is offensive to God. It doesn't matter what it is, but we have to call sin sin. Otherwise, the gospel is not good news. If you're not being saved from sin and hell and condemnation, then why did Jesus have to come and die? Anyways, that's my little rant.
Yeah, check out, Jonathan and Carl, check out the Babylon Bee. They're doing some Pride Month. Somebody sent me one of their memes. They thought it was for real. And it was kind of like in celebration of Gay Pride Month, ChickfilA is going to be salting their French fries with salt from Lot's wife or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, can you believe it? ChickfilA compromising. I said, salt from Lot's wife, you knucklehead. That's, she was turned into a pillar of salt when they exited Sodom and Gomorrah, I think. And she looked back. But this is, it's a subject which the problem is so many of us don't want to go there. I mean, when you actually love people and don't harp on it, but they come at you. My wake-up call was a human resource senior level Silicon Valley manager. I would mention the company, but I don't feel like having to question afterward if I should mention the company. So I'm just going to say, major company, beginning with the initial H, and I'll leave it there and not tell you any more.
Gosh.
And the guy's the HR director. And I'm at a coaching retreat. And one guy recognizes me there as a Christian. I'm undercover. And I'm doing this thing with Annabelle, and it's a coaching retreat for executive coaching. And I always love to go to these things to learn new things. This is where I learned about that those 4 stages of renewal, which is when you start going for it, and then you go into doldrums, when you're in a career and a lifestyle, and it's just that you're dead in the water, you're not growing, and you feel like you're truncated and stagnant. And then the next stage after that is cocooning, where you literally go into a place where you have to reconstruct what's important, what's your life about, what are your values, what's your vision. Then you come out and experiment with a new career or a new life, and boom, if it works, you go for it, and you have a period of convergence. And I learned that model there, and while I was, it was one of the pieces I liked. And while I was there doing the research, this HR guy comes up to me because someone said, hey, he's a Christian, and he had to talk to me. And it's like like on a mission. And he had to zero me out. I'm not even looking for the conversation. And he goes, hey, I understand you're a Christian. Well, what do you think about homosexuality? It's like, wow, it's like me going up to him and saying, what do you think about Jesus and the 4 spiritual laws? I wasn't doing that to anybody. But I go, well, I'm kind of caught off guard. And I said, well, when you're asking what I think about people, that, my philosophy is there's all kinds of different people. There's good people, there's bad people, but my worldview is to love all people. He said, yeah, I'm not asking you that. He said, I'm asking you, what do you think about homosexuality? So he gets all aggressive about it. And then he's the HR manager. He's hiring. By the way, I found this out yesterday. 30% of the staff at the Republican National Headquarters is LGBTQ oriented. The hiring there is skewed, 30% of them. Now, only 4% are in the national average. So when you got 30% practicing homosexuality in your Republican headquarters, it's no wonder that we don't have any brakes on this vehicle. So, having said that, I said to the guy what I thought would be acceptable. I said, the Christian worldview is unconditional love for all people at all times, but it also means that we tell the truth. And the truth is that God did not design you for homosexual union, that it's a kind of a violation of the design. And the design is for a male and female. And there's numerous reasons for that, not to mention the stability that will bring into the raising of children, receiving from both model, the feminine and the masculine input. And the affirmation of 2 that are opposite becoming one. And the Bible talks about the church as a metaphor of the church and Christ as the 2 becoming one. So there's a real spiritual mystery involved, and there's a real design issue involved. And he just cut me off furiously. And he said, how dare you say that you accept me? How dare you say that, oh, you accept me? And I could see like this, I caught a glimpse into where this agenda is. You have no idea how condescending it is for you as a Christian to tell me that you're willing to accept me as a homosexual. You're not going to accept me. You're going to affirm me. You're going to approve of it. You're going to endorse it. You will be made to endorse it. That's our mission. In other words, it's not enough that you just love the person you're different with. You will be made to kneel before this doctrine and embrace it. Or you're going to be accused of hate speech, lose your job, lose your career, and be psychologically, socially ostracized in 100 ways, because the agenda here is to force you to convert, not just to simply coexist.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me. It's like this sin is the one that's really highlighted mainstream. Because again, to your point, sin is sin. It's the human condition. This happens to be the one that's like popularized, that's supposed to go mainstream. But you have to turn away from sin. It's like when you start to know Jesus and you realize all of my sins are forgiven, I need to turn away from these things. Whatever it is, lying, stealing, hate in my heart towards other people, I need to forgive lest I won't be forgiven. If you have sinful acts that you're knowledgeable, you're committing, you need to turn away from those things and turn towards a holy life, a righteous way of living, of what the Bible outlines for us. And so it's very strange to me to see this one particular sin culturally, like you're saying, it has to be celebrated, it has to be approved of. And what's scary after talking to George Barna, how many people in church leadership don't actually maintain a biblical worldview. Because it is offensive. I mean, Jesus told us we'll be hated will be hated for these types of things.
Well, we will be, and you know, it's just, what I don't want to see in American culture is a repetition of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is, the Bible calls them signature judgments. Signature judgment is when there's an incident in the Bible where God is dealing with a certain thing, and he does it in a signature way one time, doesn't do it again, but that one time. So you'll see it with Miriam, for instance, when she speaks against her brother Moses and starts to bring division and hostility towards him in the authority structure of the family. And you see her smitten with leprosy. That's a signature judgment. It means that God attaches a significance to undermining and bringing strife into a God-ordained authority structure where he wants there to be honor, and instead you start to tear someone apart. And so so it's a signature judgment. Sodom and Gomorrah is a signature judgment. It's a particular set of cities where they're given over to rampant, aggressive, militant homosexuality, to the point where they would rape a visitor that came into the town. And so God burned the cities up and brought Lot and his family out. And it's a signature judgment. It's done one time in order to make a statement, and then history moves on. So those signature judgments are important. But what I'm worried about is that, to the extent to which I think the Lord is allowing the left to become the messenger of the most aggressive, in-your-face, offensive versions, not even veiled anymore, but like in your face. The drag queen hour, they just did this in a bar in Dallas this weekend. It's big news. And since it's local, I'm reluctant to talk about it because it's in our own backyard, but it's national news now. So they have children brought into a bar where they're being basically groomed by drag queens in order to come on the platform and learn how to walk like the drag queen, how to be like a drag queen. And the parents are bringing their children there to get groomed by the drag queens.
Yeah.
And so some protesters show up and say to the police, are you aware of the fact that you've got adolescents in a bar? The law says you cannot have children in the bar, anyone under the age of 18, but they're bringing their 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old kids in to be groomed. And so there's this big altercation. And I look at that and I go, well, that's the nature of the aggressiveness that we're dealing with in terms of what was predicted to be militant homosexuality, not just homosexuality out of the closet. And I could think of a couple of homosexuals that I actually like, that I admire in terms of their writing, their thinking, their worldview, because there's some that actually are conservative. That, you know, and I'll read their stuff and I'll go, well, the guy actually has written some brilliant stuff. I don't agree with the lifestyle, but I'm not hostile to them. And they'll be the first ones to say that the politicizing of the LGBT movement is an offense to them because they're using it as a wedge issue to change culture. And they've already won, like one of the guys says, they've already accomplished what they wanted to accomplish.
Exactly.
So stop acting like victims because others aren't affirming you.
That's my thought. I mean, this isn't the 80s anymore, you know, or early 90s where, you know, really it felt like a really small segment of culture. I mean, it is so popularized now. I mean, it's on the Tampa Bay Rays uniform. Like, it's who's being victimized at this point other than the person that wants to be a lizard or a baby? And it's so random and obscure now with the LGBT alphabet.
Well, and I don't want to go off in the whole. I don't want to do a whole show on this but it is cultural. Do you guys have anything over there? Do you find the Babylon Bee stuff? Is there anything over there it's worth? Because those guys, what I love about them is Bill Maher just covered them recently, last week. He said, who the heck is Babylon Bee? And he covered them. He said, Twitter has no business taking them off their platform because, and then he played the video. He said, it's actually funny. He said, it's satire. He said, I don't know what Christians find satire about, but he said, evidently there's an audience for Christian satire. And they were all laughing at us. But so what? That's you could do that. We don't mind that. But then he said, but actually the subject, it was about Twitter sensitivity, and it was a mock parody about going to a Twitter censor who's too hyperly sensitive, and they did a video. But what do you got over there? What's fresh on Babylon this week?
Well, we did find the meme that you were referring to about ChickfilA putting seasoning there. I actually think, yeah, they've got it right now on the screen. So we found that one. And then another one, good one that I thought they had is archaeologists uncover companies' rainbow logos from Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, that's funny.
But can you imagine, there are people sending this to me Like it's actual
real.
news. That's the part that makes me laugh.
So I have a number of thoughts, and I'm not going to speak my mind because we don't have enough time for that. One thing is that there are clear biological indicators for homosexuality. That wasn't brought up once in this conversation. I think that needs to be mentioned when we're comparing it to things like lying and infidelity. I don't think that's fair to people who are biologically hardwired to be homosexual. Also, the third born in a line of males is more likely to be gay. I don't want to offend anybody, but there are evolutionary reasons for this as far as resources and what you can actually use. And lastly, just because we only have a minute on the screen, I'm waiting very eagerly for the LGBTQ plus monolith to start attacking the Bs or the bisexuals, because just by addressing yourself as bisexual, you are automatically a bigot. So as soon as that
You're automatically
implosion,
a what? You're automatically a what?
a bigot for
Why?
saying that there are two sexes. If you're bisexual, you are attracted to either the XY or the XX.
Oh, you're saying then so you're saying a bisexual is actually violating the idea of the two?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's for bringing those up. I'm going to go back when I do my show.
Sure.
I'll do that because with the 10 seconds, I can't respond.
What are you going to do?
All right, let me just throw this out there. Biden linkage of school lunches to LGBTQ agenda holds low-income kids hostage. Now, this is how they're doing it. Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972 forbids sex-based discrimination. 1972 forbids sex-based discrimination in any educational institution that receives federal money. So it's not. There's no federal discrimination against children getting lunches based upon sex or gender. But if the schools are not signing off on the LGBTQ Biden policy, then the administration is withholding funds for their lunch programs. In other words, the kids in low-income communities are going to have their funds withheld until the schools sign off on making a special statement of their inclusivity and tolerance, because the government's going to cut off their funds. Some states are already preparing to take legal action against the administration's rules. And of course, Kristi Noem, for example, threatened a lawsuit. Governor DeSantis, once again, Governor DeSantis comes to the forefront. Why doesn't every Republican governor do what DeSantis does? You know when they were doing that WHO thing last week?
Who?
Where they were going to, who? I saw that joke coming. When the WHO, when Doctor Who was going to be taking over the sovereignty of the American, autonomy and declare global authority over shutting down nations and stuff, if there's a pandemic. And so we got all up in arms about it. And then DeSantis was the first governor that said, I don't care what the WHO says, Florida's not submitting. He said, he just basically threw it back and said, you don't have jurisdiction. That's the point. Then Ron Johnson in Wisconsin got 7 senators together and said, you don't have the right to set up a treaty that America submits to with a global organization without having it ratified by 2/3 of the Senate. That's the protocol. And so Ron Johnson had to do it. But even then, DeSantis, I love it. The guy just throws it out there and says, not going to happen in Florida. Why don't we have 50, at least 25 governors like that? All right, Mercedes, I got to land the plane. What are you thinking?
Well, I just want to show that. I want to pull it back to this drag queen hour because it was really perverse. And I saw this one. You got to put it on the screen. I don't know if you saw this or not, but it's literally, I have it on if the team can put it up there now. You got to zoom in maybe. It is a small child, and I can't scroll down too far, otherwise I show this person's butt cheeks.
Ew.
This is a transsexual. This young child is stuffing dollar bills into essentially a thong of a drag queen as the parents look on and laugh and smile. This was from the bar where the police intervened.
Basically teaching how to tip a stripper.
The sexualization of young children. That looks like it's a 5-6-year-old girl. It's perverse.
Well, the question again is it's the parents that actually need some help.
Yep.
And so, folks, I don't want to leave you on this negative note. I want to say something positive. I want to say that the benefit of what's happening and all these things is, I remember somebody asked me when the George Floyd riots were happening and the statues were coming down and we were looking at the possibility of the election being stolen before the election happened, and we were writing our book. A producer contacted me and said, Lance, where is this going? And I thought, how the heck do I know where this is going? You know, what am I, Solomon? But it's funny how this works. If somebody asks you a question and they believe you have a gift, God will frequently, like it happens to me for healing, it happens to me for prophecy. I'm charismatic, so I don't put it out there. But if people know that I could pray for them and there's testimonies of answers, their faith sometimes draws out of me what's in me that I don't even feel like I got. And there's a biblical precedent for that. Jesus wasn't going around healing everyone all the time. They were getting healed because they had faith to put a demand on him. And they touched the hem of his garment and virtue came out. So this guy says, where's this going? And I was thinking, what do I know? And I was starting to text, how do I know answer? And here's what I wrote. I believe God is laying the axe to the root of the tree. And America is now in the hour when they will see the fruit and expose the root of what's at work in the nation. And then it will make a choice. I think we're living now where we're seeing the fruit and the root. And what it is, it's a rude awakening feeding a great awakening. That's what's happening. There's no other context I can think of for how we have to maintain stability and engage with transforming the country in the presence of evil. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies, which the Bible says. It doesn't say you're going to rule at them at a distance. It says rule in the midst of thine enemies. And I believe there's a Bible verse that says that somehow God's people will contend with the enemy at the gates, that we're at the gates right now. We're going to see who occupies those gates. The church's call is to not be restrained by the gates of hell. So we're coming right to the gates. So you can't escape the headlines. You can't escape the conversation. When your 11-year-old brings it up, they're evangelizing. And you're going to have to learn how to have an answer. And we will come up with an answer for you. By the way, like and subscribe to these programs. You have no idea how interesting we find your comments. We read them. We go over them as a staff. Let us know what you're thinking. This has been a challenging conversation, but you guys love the challenging ones. You don't like the easy ones. So you're gonna have to let us know what your thoughts are. Give us your opinions. Let us know where you want to go with these conversations, because we're really designing these news cycles to be able to deal with the issues that have to be dealt with that nobody else will actually talk about. So until tomorrow, this is Lance Wallnau Show signing off, and we'll see you again on the other side.
Thanks for listening to this Lance Wallnau broadcast. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe and